So I'm Rebecca Parnell. I'm a sound designer. I run my own company, Magic Brew, which is an outsourced audio provider. So we source music, we provide sound design, implementation, and also voiceover requirements as well, and remotes, and work with recording studios and with actors and actresses. If it's at a party and I get asked, what do you do? And I do, well, I do sound for games. And they say, oh, so you write music? And I say, well, no, actually, I don't write music. Sound design is everything that's not music and not speech and not voices. So it's all the other sounds that you hear, whether they're the explosions or the gunshots or the interaction sounds, the menu sounds, the ambient sounds, the waves, the birds, all these things. That is sound design. Well, Magic Brew is actually very small. So the company is primarily myself, but because we do contract work, it expands and contracts depending on the work that's going on. So when I'm working on a project, I know people that are very good at Foley sounds and doing sounds to animations, and they're fantastic. And I know that I can give them a set of animations and they do really great sounds. And I know some other people are really good at the technical side of things and planning and speccing out how the sounds are going to be implemented and the overall sort of technical design in areas like that. So it's all about bringing in the right people for the right job. Foley are real life, everyday sounds. They're not abstract sounds, they are the creak of sitting in a chair, the opening and closing of a door, the opening and closing of a window, open closing of a handbag, real life things that you touch and you use. Yes, well, it really depends on the project, and it depends on the budget, which always determines what you can do. So yes, so I've worked with Foley companies that have a Foley stage and Foley artists. I work with people that work with Foley within films, so they already have a great resource of their own recordings and their own personal libraries that they've built up over the years. So sound design has multiple purposes. Firstly, it's to reinforce what the gamer is doing and their connection within the game world. So when you make an interaction with the game world, then you get the audio feedback from what you are doing to feel that you're immersed within the world and that what you're doing makes sense. But then there's the other side of sound design too, which is more on the same lines of the purpose of what music does. So it can influence how the player experiences the game, how they feel. Do they feel tense? Do they feel scared? Do they feel happy? Does it feel fun? If it's an arcade game and it's high adrenaline and you're scoring loads of points, how does the sound make the player feel? And that all comes in together. So it's not just about ticking boxes and, oh, this door opens and closes. How does it sound? Is it closed softly? Is it slammed shut? What is the emotional impact behind that sound? And also, the other element as well, especially with ambient sounds, is what is the context that you can give within the sounds? What information can you give to the player that you don't have to spell out in story and dialogue? How can you fill in the gaps? And games say like Bioshock do it phenomenally well. They really give the sense of the setting, the time, with the music that's played within the world, with the ambient speech, all of these things can kind of build into making the game world give an identity, to make it unique, and to really bring the environment to life and reinforce the purpose of the game and the story and the context at that particular point within the game. Oh, there's been so many. When I started out in 97, most of the people that worked within sound generally tended to be composers that did sound effects as well. And that's completely understandable because of how the technology was up until that point. But when I started working in games, there'd been some massive changes with PC gaming and the boom of PC gaming and the progress of PCs as well, and how more powerful they're becoming. CD music, the massive changes CD music with the PlayStation, and then you had the N64, more memory, PlayStation 2. So when I started in the industry, there weren't that many of us that were just purely sound designers, and that our focus was on the sound effects and not of the music. And I think if you're a composer and you're passionate about writing music, that's really where your priorities are going to be. And I think that there was also an assumption of, with sound effects, just grab a few sounds out of a sound library and just chuck them in. And so that's what sound design was picking out some explosions and some bird tweets and putting them in the script or giving them to the programmer and just mixing the levels, and that was it. So the whole art of sound design, even though it was fully developed in the film industry, was only really starting to emerge over this time, and the appreciation of what sound design could bring. We all started to change at this time. And it was all a combination of the new platforms, the PlayStation 2, the Dreamcast, the N64, more the content that we could have in, even though it was so tight, how more sophisticated the technology was becoming as well. And really starting to look at techniques like granularization, manipulating parameters like pitch and volume, delay, all of these things that could randomize the sound and to keep it fresh and not to be the same repetitive sound playing over and over again, but making the most out of the sound assets. The actual wave sounds themselves are very expensive within memory, but what you could do with these parameters could really keep it fresh and keep it natural. So I started in '97, and I had a work experience with Richard Joseph, who was an audio legend, and I was so lucky. A family friend was working at Sensible Software, and I asked if I could get some work experience with them, and he put me in touch with Richard, and we just got on like a house on fire. We had the same sense of humour. We had so much fun, and I think he enjoyed that I came in pretty, just having done like a 2-year music technology college course and pretty clueless really, and not just coming in with like just lots of ideas. Yeah, it was a good combination that he passed on to me his skills of how to manipulate sound and how to make it sound good and how to EQ and apply processes and effects for the sounds to sound good, and I came in with all these crazy ideas. So one of the big projects that we worked on was Theme Park World, and they outsourced all the ride sounds to us. And a really good example of this kind of fresh use of how to manipulate the sounds was for the rides. We were playing with chopping up the sounds into little chunks, and they had to be the same length. And then randomizing their playback so that for the tracks of the roller coaster you could have a chink 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 chink, but then it could play it back that way. And I remember like, when we were working on the roller coasters, we were really stuck with what to do with the screens for the roller coasters, because in the sound libraries, the sounds of the roller coaster, you didn't just have screens on their own, but we really wanted to have children's screens, and so you can't really just kind of get in a few actors, and you could do, but in this game there were cute little children running around. One of the ideas that came up to Richard was, well, why don't we just go to the local primary school and record the kids? And so he contacted the primary school, and we had it arranged that in their drama class we would go out into the playground and record them screaming. But instead of recording them together as a group, we recorded them individually so that we could play them back as a group, but randomise the pitch, the volume, delay settings, so it just sounded fresh every time. And that was, going out and recording sounds is so much fun. I remember some of the kids were like really excited and couldn't wait to scream their guts out. And there was one little girl, and she was like so shy, and she was like, "Oh, come on, you have a turn too, come on." And she got behind the mic and she let rip the loudest scream, like ear piercing, like you were expecting windows to smash. It was brilliant. And it really added that energy to the roller coasters and to the game sounds, and just how you'd expect it to sound, and the feel for it. It's fantastic, yeah. Yeah, actually, a couple of years ago, I was recording with 2 guys I was working with, and we were And we needed to get some natural water sounds and splashing sounds and rippling sounds. And so we got to the reservoir really early in the morning. It was so quiet. We were so lucky. It was a beautiful summer's day. It was dry. There wasn't any wind. There weren't any birds. It was brilliant. And first of all, we do the gentle splashing around, and that was all very good. And then we went looking around for things to chuck into the reservoir. And that's when the security came around and told us to move on. We managed to get some good splashes before that point, though, so that was good. The challenge, context for the performance, because you can record people together in groups now for dialogue, but this is still quite relatively new. Quite often you'll be recording a voice artist on their own, whether it's to perform for in-game action or for the narrative, but it's different to, say, film on set, because you're surrounded by the set that's been or within the set that's been created. So we're already surrounded and filled with the context. Okay, with the green skin that could be different, but you already have that context. You have the context of the actors that you're acting with as well, and the story. Whereas within games, quite often a voice artist may be just brought in for maybe a few days or for an afternoon to provide some. I tend to work a lot with non-word voiceover, just general emotes for the games, and they tend to be really loud stuff, screaming battle cries or cute laughs or giggles or all these different things. And so context is really important, and a mic placement as well. You know, you don't want narrative mic close up when they're going to be screaming their guts out. The context of the distance as well. So I tend to try and collate as much information as I can give to the voice artists to provide them with context, to explain to them what's happening in the game at that point, to provide screenshots, videos, play blasts, animations of the, videos of the animations, just anything that you can to provide them with the context so they can absorb themselves within that game world, and they can do the best performance that they can that will work within the game. Well, there are people that are very good at that. And I was doing a voice session at Mark's actually last year, and direction, it cannot be underestimated just how a professional can really bring out the performance of an artist as well. But we had to do the sounds, battle cries, and cheers. But it was all very gruesome. We wanted it to be very raw and very gruesome and full of loads of energy. And so we managed to get 15 actors into his live room. And he put up several mics around the room. And he conducted it like an orchestra, and he arranged it like orchestration as well. He thought about the different depths of the voice to have the deep tenors and the more mid-range and higher voices, and it was incredible. And they all fed off each other, and the energy from that performance was just phenomenal, and just like, it was so intense, brilliant. But they were all bouncing ideas off each other, and there's a little bit of competitiveness as well, which is pretty good. And they were fantastic, but they didn't even really need any briefing, because these actors have worked together so much in the past. Have worked on Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Rome, these kinds of games. So, they work as extras on these productions. So yeah, they are experts in doing these types of emotes. Yeah.